Tonight on the Money programme, the AA likes to think of itself as the driver's friend. But is that friendship in danger of breaking down? The AA was controversially taken over in 2004 by the new whiz kids of the city, private equity. Since then, there's been radical cost-cutting. Hundreds of patrolmen have left. Some customers are complaining.
They call themselves the fourth emergency service, and they wouldn't come out to help somebody.
As private equity takes over more of Britain's best-loved brands, from Boots to Birdseye, there's also concern about the high levels of debt they pile on these companies.
Pushed to the absolute extreme in an economic downturn, it could mean the company going into administration.
We investigate the impact of private equity on the roadside service and ask, is its takeover of the AA rescue or wrong turn?
Not this time. But I know a man who can.
Steve Thompson used to be a man who can. He started as a roadside patrolman in North Wales in the 1980s.
I remember going out and doing my very first job. It was a Fiesta. There was a carburettor fault in Stockport, in Greater Manchester. And I went to this job thinking, can I do this job?
Are you the man who can?
He most certainly is.
This is very nice of you.
He's a very nice
You're
man.
a very nice man.
I like it.
You're a very nice man. A very, very nice man.
I went there and it was just a piece of cake, same as it was in the garage, but a greater satisfaction because you're helping someone that was stuck at the roadside.
The AA Steve Thompson joined had grown from an elite motorists club before the First World War into a uniquely British institution. The fourth emergency service, serving millions of members and the public at large. Steve showed me the company awards he'd collected over 2 decades.
And I'm in the top 100 club for 5 years on the trot, from 97, 98, 99, 2000 and 2002. This one here was given me for outstanding achievement for 2000, and I've got another one here for 2002.
And what was the AA like? What kind of organisation was it?
You were appreciated. Staff were all happy, everyone enjoyed the job, you'd meet each other at the roadside, and nobody would have anything to say bad about the job. It was just such a good job.
But then it all changed. In September 2004, the AA was taken over by a private equity consortium. A few months later, Steve was summoned to meet his managers. It was exactly 20 years since his first day on the job. But that wasn't what they wanted to talk to him about.
Instead of getting a gold watch, I was taken into the office by 2 managers and told that I was now a low achiever.
How did that make you feel to be a low achiever?
I was absolutely gutted because in the past I'd achieved all they'd asked me to achieve. I'd got up in the middle of the night, I'd worked in London for them for 6 months, 8 months, some years, just to help this company out because it was such a great company to work for. And to walk in the office and be told I'm a low achiever, it was just an unbelievable thing to hear.
The AA's new owners were from private equity, the new darlings of the city. Soon they reduced the AA's total workforce of 10,000 by a third. This type of cost-cutting is common in private equity takeovers, and it's creating huge controversy. They've been called asset strippers and worse. Private equity is now buying up more and more companies. Boots and EMI Records are in its sights. Respected city bosses are voicing doubts.
It's having a huge impact on the structure of UK financial markets and the UK economy. Very few UK companies are now free from being targeted by private equity.
The AA buyout was presided over by the new industry's leading light. His name, Damon Buffini. His private equity firm, Permira, is Britain's biggest, and he's said to be personally worth around £200 million. These are some of the brands that his fund has owned. There's been Tetley, Little Chef, Homebase, Goldsmiths the Jewellers, Travelodge, and also Birdseye. Now, from these companies and others, his fund has made nearly £5 billion.
To get to a peak in private equity, you have to generate a long record of making good money for your investors. So Damon's done very well at getting a machine that does good deals. He's been very good at growing it internationally. He's been very good at growing the investor base.
Some of the trade unionists he's dealt with are less complimentary.
Damon Buffini and many of the other private equity leaders have gone from investment to speculation, and they're now looking after good household names who's making good profits, who's got lots of assets. They buy them out, asset strip them, sell them on, make their bucks and run.
When Damon Buffini and private equity took over at the AA, they had a typically robust plan. Tim Parker is Damon Buffini's man at the helm. His job was to implement a new strategy for this old company.
Well, I suppose our business plan consisted of really three main strands. The first was that we felt the AA had lost a little bit of focus and had acquired a number of businesses which are not core to what it was doing. The second was we thought there was a fantastic opportunity to improve the quality of service and invest in the business. And the third component was really what we saw as very substantial efficiency improvements that could be made.
For AA patrolman Steve Thompson, those efficiency improvements became very real on the day he was called into his manager's office. Steve was among hundreds of roadside patrolmen who lost their jobs. Some hoped for redundancy payoffs of up to £80,000. Instead, they were branded low achievers and offered exit payments of around £18,000 or a retraining course. If they failed the course, they'd be dismissed with no money.
After I came out of that meeting, I was given a few days to think about this. But taking a 16-week training programme, and then at the end of it, they turn around and say, you haven't achieved, and I don't get anything. And they just sack me. I think that the option was at that time, I was to take the money.
£18,000, what kind of a deal did you think that was?
I thought it was an absolutely disgusting deal. But getting nothing would have been even worse still.
The new management calculated how profitable each patrolman was to the business. They drew up lists of patrols they wanted to let go. We've spoken to many who, like Steve Thompson, felt pressurised to leave. The union that represents some of the workforce believes people were denied redundancy payments and forced out for less money.
It was horrendous. And the AA knows it was horrendous. Management chose not to use a redundancy route because it took away their profits and it took away the private equity profits. And this amounted to nothing bar corporate bullying on behalf of the AA management.
The AA's chief executive rejects the bullying allegation and maintains it was an issue of performance. Had these people been made redundant, you'd have had to be paying them each, 60, 70, maybe even £80,000. Yeah. Is that why you turned it into a voluntary exit rather than a redundancy situation?
Yeah, well, I can honestly tell you, just to re-emphasise the point, that we had genuine performance issues there and they needed to be addressed. They had not been addressed for many, many years, and it was essential that we did that. You and I may take issue as to what is good or bad performance, but I felt that was a key issue for the members, and we addressed it.
In a couple of years, the job cuts had reduced the AA's costs by around £80 million. Private equity's next task was to make the patrols who remained more productive. In our research, we spoke to many AA patrolmen. Most told us the job got harder under private equity.
We're treated like a very small cog in a big machine, and the small cogs are getting no maintenance, they're just pushed to the limit, and that seems to be the way they are.
By contrast, the AA introduced us to star patrolman Ian Gillespie.
The job is just fantastic. You know, you're going out to our members, we're giving good service at the side of the road, and we're seeing people that every time I go out to people, we're just blowing their expectations away.
Is Ian typical? Not according to an employee chat room. I'm on a website for AA staff, which is called AA People. It's actually restricted, but I've been given the password. AA People seems to be populated by a lot of unhappy workers. Here's just a couple of blogs I found in the last few minutes. I won't see the wife and kids for a month. My wife saw the new rota and said, hand in your notice. They don't seem to give a, can't say that word, about family life and want us all to be AA robots. And here's another. This job has become total, can't say that. Since private equity took over, you'll find that most patrols are completely hacked off with the way that things are going. The next leg of the efficiency improvements included getting patrols to do more jobs per shift and make more membership sales. Two who've recently left agreed to speak to us on condition we protect their identity.
It was really hard to change from being a caring organisation to somebody who was going out and trying to make a profit every day. It was just so hard. You had it on your mind all day long that you had to fill this pot up with money. If you didn't meet your target, your manager would start pressurising you, saying, you know, you're not doing your job properly. I want you to make more members. You didn't feel you could spend the time with the member. It did spoil it a hell of a lot.
The AA's chief executive believes critics of his new approach are a minority.
I feel our patrols aren't in a bad position, and the vast majority, and this is one, again, I have to stress, you know, if you were able to talk to the vast majority of our patrols, I think you would find a very committed and enthusiastic group of people.
According to some in the city, it's a feature of big private equity buyouts that employees can be low on the list of priorities.
There's a certain model of private equity investment which looks at stripping costs out. And in that sense, employment prospects may well be less attractive. It could be argued that those are essentially unproductive jobs. But that's a very economic approach to it. It's rather harsh when looked at in social context.
The AA say earnings are now up by £120 million thanks to improvements. It sounds like the company's doing brilliantly. But here's the strangest thing. The AA is now saddled with a gigantic debt. Private equity loaded on £1.3 billion of borrowed money at the takeover. Understand this, and you get the key to how the industry really works. Well, I'm on my way to Manchester now to meet a man who can explain all, mainly because he used to be part of this secretive trade. Now, the financing is quite complicated, so I've got some props to help explain. First of all, you'll be asking, what is a grown man doing playing with toy cars? Well, this AA van represents £100 million of private equity cash, and this lorry represents £1 billion of private equity investment. Let's swap to the other side, and it's bank loans. It's the same kind of deal, really. This red van represents £100 million of debt, and this red lorry represents £1 billion of debt. Now, I hope you're paying attention to that, because it's important. Peter Folkman was in on Damon Buffini's first ever deal back in the early 1990s. Hello, Peter. Would you like a bag full of cash or a bag full of debt?
I think I'll take the money.
In that case,
That's
there we are.
very good.
Now he spends his time in the more relaxed setting of Manchester University's business school. So the total purchase price of the AA was £1.8 billion. Now, how was that made up?
Well, we have the private equity fund, and they will have put in £500 million.
Peter uses the toy vans to explain the deal in round numbers.
That's the investment that the investors will have put in cash, out of their risk capital, into the deal.
So that £500 million is their cash investment, but where does the rest of the money come from?
Well, the rest came from Barclays Bank in the form of loans. So we have £1 billion, another £100 million, and £1.3 billion of loan capital.
So together that makes the purchase price of £1.8 billion.
Yes.
But only roughly £500 million came from Damon Buffini and private equity.
That's right. Roughly 25% equity content, 75% debt content. That would be a fairly typical deal structure for a transaction of this sort.
In March last year, Damon Buffini and his investors borrowed a further £500 million. Then they paid themselves back the £500 million they'd originally put in to buy the AA. The newspapers called it a special dividend. But in return, they'd saddled the AA with even more debt. So how did the special dividend work? Was that about cost-cutting and an increase in profits as well?
Well, on the basis that the company had performed well and the profits had grown, the company had been able to go to the bank and borrow another £500 million.
And now look what happens. So private equity gets its cash back.
Yes, that's right. And they've used the £500 million to pay themselves their special dividend.
And the AA then has £1.8 billion worth of debt.
Exactly.
So the AA is good news for the private equity investors so far. But what about fund managers Damon Buffini and Permira? Thank you. You may be wondering why I'm in Covent Garden buying coffee. Well, I'll tell you. It's because over there is the office of Damon Buffini. And now I know more about private equity, I'm ready to ask some pertinent questions of Permira. It's a rather unassuming office. Hard to believe that nearly a quarter of us are employed by companies owned out of this building. Damon Buffini won't meet me, but I do get to see the number 2, Charles Sherwood.
Well, these are the rooms where our own team have their offices. This is where the work is done. This is where we analyse business propositions, where the team have their computers, and it's not very exciting, I'm afraid, but it's where we're based and where we make our everyday decisions.
Not very exciting maybe, but then he told me their basic fees. 1.5% of the fund that bought the AA and other well-known companies. Doesn't sound much, but listen to this.
Well, the way the fees are calculated is on the committed capital of the fund. So Permira Europe 3 was a fund of around about €5 billion.
About £3 billion?
About £3 billion.
So that's 1.5% of £3 billion, which makes £45 million a year.
And the management fee would be calculated on that sum, probably for the first 3 years of the fund's life.
So that's now £135 million in fees for managing the fund that bought the AA. Nice work if you can get it. He insists the fees are fair and that Permira's skill turns round companies.
If businesses are not competitive, if they do not produce good value products and services for their customers, then they have no long-term future and they will employ no one.
So where has private equity taken the AA? It's making more money. But it's got a mountain of debt. And what about the service to members? Has private equity had an effect? We looked at 2 cases among a number, which suggests things might have changed. Leonard Douglas believes the AA let him down badly. His brother-in-law David died suddenly one day while driving. Leonard went to collect the car.
David was going to a football match and he was coming down this road and apparently had an heart attack. That's where he died, David, over there.
When Leonard arrived, he found the car's battery had gone flat. Knowing his brother-in-law had been a lifelong member of the AA, he called them for help.
And he said, why? I says, well, my brother-in-law's just died. And she says, oh, you'll have to rejoin. I says, you what? I says, look, did you meet first time round? I says, he's just died. We want to get his car back home. Oh, I'll have to get in touch with somebody.
So this is literally just hours after he died?
Not hours, about an hour.
In the end, the AA never turned up, and Leonard had to fix his brother-in-law's car on his own.
They called themselves the 4th Emergency Service, and they wouldn't come out to help somebody.
The AA say they thoroughly investigated this case and apologised at the time. They say it's not representative of their service. Another disappointed AA member is airline hostess Heather Carroll. Her son Finley has been diagnosed with asthma. One day Heather tucked Finley, then a baby, into his car seat. Heather's keys were inside. Her son was trapped. In a panic, she phoned the AA, but she'd recently moved house and couldn't tell the operator the full postcode.
She couldn't bring the details up on her computer of my membership. So she said, I'm sorry, I can't send anybody out, I can't find your details. So, well, my AA card's in the car, send someone out and I can produce that when they arrive. No, I can't send anyone out unless I can bring your details up on the screen.
Did the operator know that you had an 11-month-old baby locked in the car who was diagnosed with breathing difficulties? That was quite clear.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
In the end, the police arrived and rescued Finley. When she got home, Heather cancelled her AA membership.
They advertised themselves as the 4th Emergency Service, and in my view, that was an emergency when a baby's involved, when it was handled totally inappropriately.
Again, another case which stands out by its exception. Occasionally we get mistakes, and sometimes in the business we're in, the job we have to do, mistakes are made. We try and understand how the mistake occurred, and we try and put it right.
When private equity took over, the AA was Which magazine's undisputed best buy. But by 2005, the AA had slipped down a gear. And by 2006, at the time of that big investor payout, Which was reporting the AA's performance had slipped significantly in the key area of response times. Although 6 months later Which acknowledged there'd been some improvement, the boss admitted on an in-house talk show the AA no longer had enough patrols.
When you execute change, you go at a fair pace. And I think in the rush for the hills, we probably reduced our patrol force by more than we should have done. Well, with hindsight, with such a hot year and such an increase in the workload, we could have done with slightly more patrols. And we learned something from that. So in the process of change, there's a few ups and downs. But where we've arrived at is a much more effective patrol force.
It's recently been reported that the AA's owners are looking to sell the company soon for £3 billion. The private equity shareholders say their strategy has enhanced the business's value. To understand how the sale will make yet more money for Damon Buffini and the consortium, it's back to Peter Folkman's living room. If the AA is sold for £3 billion, who gets what?
Well, the first claim is the bankers. So that's 1.8 billion is used to pay at the bank. And then what's left, the 1.2 billion, that goes back to the shareholders.
That makes a total of £1.7 billion, which is 3.5 times the amount they invested. It's pretty good, isn't it?
That's an excellent deal, and that's what we call the successful private equity story. The flip side, of course, is they could have lost all their money.
How much does Damon Buffini and his group actually make?
Well, this is where the fund managers make their real money. In general terms, they will get 20% of the profits on the transaction.
So it's up to around £240 million for the private equity consortium.
If we realise an investment, any investment at a profit, and the fund as a whole is making a profit and hitting its minimum rate of return, then certainly we would share in the upside and new value created by that.
And there's a good reward for the AA's chief executive, installed when private equity took over.
I own approximately 2.5% of the ordinary equity of this business.
So, if the AA is sold for the reported £3 billion that's been talked about in the financial papers, how much will that mean to you?
Well, you can do lots of hypothetical sums, and values can be talked about. I've got a meaningful stake in this business. I feel that's a very desirable thing.
Tim Parker can expect to make £30 million when the AA is sold. But for now, the AA is carrying £1.8 billion of debt. The question is so much debt a good thing?
If the company is making more profits and can service the debt, that's fine. If we get hard times, then undoubtedly it'll make the AA much more vulnerable.
The Financial Services Authority warns a private equity company collapse from debt is now inevitable. Other senior city figures are also concerned.
If debt is pushed to the absolute extreme in an economic downturn, it could mean the company going into administration.
But at Permira, Charles Sherwood denies overloading companies with debt.
Clearly, whenever we look at a business, we think very, very carefully about what would be the appropriate capital structure for that enterprise. It serves us no good at all to burden a company with more debt than it is capable of servicing in a sensible way.
Judging from this recent awards lunch, the industry is going from strength to strength. Over 1 million of us now work for companies owned by private equity. Their latest buyout, Boots the Chemist, for £11 billion. These people really are the new masters of the universe. And today, Damon Buffini's Permira is up for Best Fundraiser of the Year.
The winner is Permira.
So another feather in the cap for Damon Buffini and his group, all part of the irresistible rise of Permira.
But former AA patrolman Steve Thompson has a word of warning about the private equity bonanza.
Well, if anybody's hears private equity taking over their company, just beware of the signs. Watch out for, watch you not sign anything that's going to sell your soul.
For more information, go to bbc.co.uk/moneyprogram. Next time, we go shopping with Fiona Bruce as we investigate the big stores' claims that they're getting greener. That's a Money Programme special, How Green Is Your High Street, on June the 28th at 9 o'clock here on BBC2.